Hi fam, Miss B here. Uh, just wanted to say hello, see how everybody's doing, and that there's been quite a bit of talk about health and wellness, and I've referenced my health journey with this autoimmune disease that I've been diagnosed with, and so this is going to be a quick overview, or as quick as I can, because y'all know I get long-winded. Overview of autoimmune diseases, and actually, this the way I kind of see this being a series of videos from the autoimmune disease major umbrella to down to the actual disease that I was diagnosed with, as well as my journey in getting to that diagnosis, and then my journey in learning how to maintain it and live life with it. So, um, with that being said, let's dive right on in. So, you wind up getting or developing an autoimmune disease when your immune system, and that's the system in your body that's charged with uh, fighting any attacks, if you will. Now, I have a tendency to personify things or to give allegories and examples that might make it easier for you to understand, especially younger people. So, for those of you who are able to roll with the scientific words, the medical terms, that's great. But when I present, I'll be presenting as simple as possible, because the last thing I want to do is put this information out there for someone to benefit, yet I use terms and language that's, that they can't understand. It does them no good if they can't understand what I'm saying and they've got to spend more time looking up in a dictionary what the words are. So, that being the case, your immune system, that's your army. That's the army that's in your body. And that army or that military is there to defend your body. And it's there to defend your body at all costs. And even if it means it has to make sacrifices, um, it's going to do that. It may have to cut off uh, soldiers, if you will, in one part of the body if it thinks, let's say, you've got something going on in your foot, but you also have something going on in your brain. Your immune system is smart enough to realize and say, hey, wait a minute, we've got a foot and we've got a brain. The brain is more important than the foot. We will put most of our soldiers on the brain because that's more critical to overall life. If we have to give up the foot, if we have to lose the foot, that's fine. We'll lose the foot or we'll lose some portion of the foot. So he sends, your body sends a few soldiers down that way, but the bulk of them are going to concentrate on fighting the issue in the brain. So that's kind of the simplistic way of looking at it. But problem is when you've got, for whatever reason, your immune system is overactive. It's fighting all the time. It's constantly fighting, constantly fighting, constantly fighting. It's being triggered left and right, left and right, left and right. It becomes overactive and it winds up even targeting good tissue. So let's say, for example, with our example of the foot and the brain, you've got something going on in your foot, something going on in your brain, and your immune system, those soldiers have gotten so worn out with fighting, they're fighting so much, they mess up and they say, okay, well, there's something going on in the hand. There's not anything going on in the hand, really, or the hand might be experiencing symptoms from what's going on somewhere else. But your soldiers, they're so I could say, I won't say drunk with fighting, but they've been fighting so much they're just ready to fight everything in sight, and so they wind up fighting your hand. They'll like, okay, well, the hand looks similar to the foot, and I know we've got an issue down there at the foot, so we're going to attack the hand too. And they begin attacking your hand. So, and that's in essence what an autoimmune disease is. It's where some portion of your body is being attacked by the body itself. Instead of your soldiers waiting for foreigners to come in and try to invade, your soldiers start fighting themselves. Or they start fighting the organs within the body that they're designed to protect. And in the process, they're attacking normal tissues, and so those normal tissues begin to die or deteriorate, or they go into disease mode. And there are combinations of reasons why autoimmune conditions develop. Scientists have not identified any one particular one, and my guess is they won't. In my research and in my personal experience, I've identified some. What I personally identified are things like vaccinations, because vaccinations, for one, they introduce various pathogens, bacteria and viruses and metals and other things into the body. So your soldiers, your immune system soldiers are sitting there, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, these new things are coming in. And at the same time, the vaccinations introduce immunosuppressants. Immunosuppressants are things which tell the immune system to stand down. So think of it, you've got your soldiers, you've got strangers coming in ready to fight, ready to attack, ready to do harm, and you also have some other higher ranking, if you will, military that's saying, stand down. Soldiers don't fight. Let it happen. That's kind of that process, if you will, with the vaccinations. Now, of course, we know the vaccinations purportedly are there to allow your system to build an immunity toward that particular condition. That's a whole nother subset of videos on whether that actually happens or not, or the efficacy of those vaccinations. But that's what they tell us they're supposed to do. Another thing I found in my research and in my experience when it comes to autoimmune diseases is that various pathogens help to trigger them, especially those that are not bacteria, that are antibiotic resistant or resistant to any other kind of treatment. I know we've heard the terms of superbug. What we have not really heard very much is the term mycoplasma. And those are pathogens that, along the lines of superbugs, they're really, really, really tiny, or microorganisms, let's say, micropathogens. They're smaller than bacteria and viruses. They're but they're more common, if you will. And I say that because we all have at least one or two strains in our body. They've been placed into population in various ways, in the food, in the plants, in the animals. And so if you didn't get it directly, like through one of the vaccinations or by touching, directly contacting something that, how you got it in, you got it through the food chain. If it came in the grass that the cows ate and it got in the cow's body and you ate that beef, then you have it. And so it just is, I'd say, everybody on this earth, if they don't have it by now, they will very soon if they keep on living. And in my research, that is by design. These guys don't normally show up on regular, CDC blood tests and that sort of thing. There are specific tests for them. They are a little bit more expensive, and the way the insurances are set up, doctors are not going to test for them. You've got to push your doctor to test for them, and then you have to know the name of which one you're testing for, and you've got to convince the doctor why you need to test for it, and then they have to convince the insurance to pay for it. Well, for those who don't know me yet, I just say, get a couple $100s together, go to a doctor that's not on the insurance, and they can give you an order to get the testing. You know, obviously they'll do an office visit and talk about the history and that sort of thing. But if they feel there's a need to test for these, you can pay out of pocket to do it. You just have to do it with a doctor that's not on the insurance that you're paying out of pocket for. If you go through insurance with a doctor, then you have to follow their rules. And insurance pretty much is not going to pay for it, or they're going to give you a hard time about paying for it to get it done. So what I have learned in this journey, and I'll say this now, I'll probably say this a few times, is if you want your health, you're going to have to pay for it. Don't expect insurance to cover the journey of you getting, back to better health. It's going to be an out-of-pocket expense. Now, what you can do is supplement, do those things on the insurance that the insurance will cover, but be in position to go outside of the insurance. And between the two, if you've got a good naturopathic doctor or osteopathic doctor, and a good primary doctor on your insurance, the two of them can work kind of together, if you will, with you being the middle person, and get you to a good point. In one of my other videos, I think the one about meeting a therapist, I mentioned having a medical team. This is important, especially if you've been diagnosed with any kind of autoimmune condition. You definitely want to establish your medical team, because autoimmunes tend to come in pairs. They're almost like, for those of us from New York, we know like they're like roaches. There's never one of them. There's another one along the way somewhere. And autoimmunes kind of operate that way as well. So you definitely want a good, strong medical team so that you can kind of stay on top of things. Each autoimmune disease affects a different part of the body. Most of them are characterized by high levels of inflammation, period. That's just across the board, inflammation. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot the immune system stress. That's one of the other things that will help trigger an autoimmune condition, extreme levels of stress. But as I was going to say, each autoimmune condition affects a different part of the body, a different organ, whether it's your muscles, your bones, your tissues, just, a different part. And I'm going to kind of mention a few maybe, but autoimmunes tend to be, women tend to get them twice as likely as men, and they're more common in blacks, Negroid, African American, whatever term you want to use for us, melanated people. They tend to be more common in us. Inflammation. I mentioned inflammation. They're all, almost all of them are characterized by some degree of some extreme degree of inflammation. Inflammation is caused by, there are a couple different causes of inflammation. Injury. If you bump your finger, there's going to be some inflammation in that area. It'll hurt for a minute, may only hurt for 5 minutes and keep going. But in the process of that hurt, and in the process of all your little soldiers, your military guys running to that finger to see what they need to do to make sure everything's okay, there's going to be a little bit of inflammation there. And your normal body process allows that inflammation to do what it does, and then breaks it down, if you will, and let it dissipates back out through your bloodstream and back out into the bloodstream and through and out your body. In an autoimmune condition, that inflammation does not necessarily dissipate the way it's supposed to, so it kind of collects up. Another way that you develop inflammation is by pathogen or infection or flu or some sort of bug, some sort of bacteria or virus or whatever the case may be. It's going to cause inflammation. Again, same thing. That's the fallout from the fight. The fight between your soldiers and the little soldiers that belong to this bacteria. So you got the bacteria soldiers and you got the soldiers in your body, and they're fighting. And the fallout, if you want to look at it this way, is the dead soldiers, the ones that get killed. That's the fallout. That's the inflammation. And finally, stress. Stress causes inflammation as well. So you've got 3 different ways that you can get inflammation. Stress, some sort of pathogen, or injury. Some samples of some autoimmune diseases and the body parts that they impact. Diabetes, type 1 and 2, the pancreas, and that's the inability for your body to maintain and regulate blood sugar appropriately. The pancreas has been attacked, and it is attacking itself, or your body is attacking the pancreas, and it no longer has that ability to maintain your blood sugar. Graves' disease and Hashimoto's disease are both attacks of the thyroid. Graves is the autoimmune attack of the thyroid, which makes your thyroid hyperactive, overactive. Hashimoto's makes the thyroid underactive, but both of them attack the thyroid gland. Graves' eye disease, which I think they call, exophthalmos, which is where the muscles and nerves in your eyes are attacked. And that can be very serious when you see people walking around and they've got these big eyes, look like they're popping out of the sockets. Oftentimes they'll have Graves' eye disease. And again, it's an autoimmune. It's nothing that they did. They can't close their eyes. They can't put their eyes back in their sockets. And as I discuss my journey, I'll talk about how I used to get so frustrated because people would look at me when I was in this phase of it, and they would, make comments and as if I could control it, and I couldn't. And so, I went through my little phase of shame is not the correct word, but yeah, I guess shame, for lack of a better word at this moment, that's the word I would use. Because it was something I couldn't control, and I had so many people commenting and making, statements as if I had control over it. And then you have your adrenals, the adrenal glands, that's part of the endocrine system, and they, Cushing's and Addison's are the two autoimmunes that impact the adrenals. The Addison's is when your adrenals are underactive, and Cushing's is when your adrenals are overactive. And underactive adrenals, well, let's talk about the adrenals really. I'll talk about it real quick. The adrenals those are the little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. You've got one on each top of each kidney, and they determine when you're in a situation, when you're in crisis, whether you fight, whether you flight, or whether you freeze. So either you're going to fight back, you're going to run, or you're going to be the girl in the movie that just stands there and screams and does nothing. Your adrenals control that. So Addison's is when they're underactive. Cushing's is when they're overactive. And Cushing's tends to be, overactive adrenals tend to be 3 times more popular in women than men. Hence probably why every time a woman has an issue, the doctors say she's got anxiety. And because that's where anxiety kind of, comes from. The adrenals are being overactive at that moment. And they give her a pill or give her an antidepressant, which is supposed to actually help with, they say it's supposed to help with it, and send her home and really don't look at it any further. Cushing's with an overactive adrenal can lead to things like heart attack, stroke, blood clots, high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, various infections, depression and mood swings, anxiety, memory loss. It can even trigger your pancreas not to be able to maintain the proper blood sugar balance. So Cushing's in itself can be fatal. If it can trigger heart attacks and strokes and blood clots, how many people have died because they had a blood clot travel to the wrong organ, to the lungs or whatever the case may be, or in your leg and it doesn't, go the way it's supposed to go, and you've got issues and you wind up dying. So Cushing's can be fatal. There is also lupus. Lupus attacks the entire body. It just, this guy is, and I told you I tend to personify things. Lupus, he's rogue. He just goes wherever he wants. He attacks the whole body, the kidneys, the liver, the skin, the joints, anywhere he wants, he just goes and he tears up stuff. Then there's rheumatoid arthritis. Many of you probably, you may be experiencing it now, or your grandparents experienced it, or whatever the case may be, where you get to a point where your joints begin to hurt, especially in the hands and knees and things like that. That's rheumatoid arthritis. That is an autoimmune condition. Your body is now attacking itself. It is attacking the joints, and it's leaving a whole bunch of inflammation in that area. And so I think one of the old remedies was just pop an aspirin or a couple aspirin and keep going. Well, you know what? In the earlier stages that might work, but as it advances, the aspirin doesn't work. It gets worse. Um, Alopecia. Alopecia is when the body is attacking your hair. So these women who are going bald, who are losing their hair in patches, it's not always because of a weave. She could have alopecia. And the reality, when I hear people talk about these women that are wearing weaves and wigs, I almost want to just scream, because we don't know why they're wearing those weaves and wigs. We don't know if they have various bald spots in their head. I know one person in particular, hers, it just literally, the crown of her head is bald. She still has her hair around, like the edges of her head, but then the crown of her head is bald. And so she wears weave or added hair, whatever you want to call it, and her stylist does it kind of in such a way so that it covers up her bald spot. So when we're dogging these women out about the weaves that they wear, let's just find out why they're wearing a weave or why they're wearing a wig first before we dog them out. If they're doing it because they're not happy with themselves, that's one thing. If they're doing it because they want to appear to be more of the Caucasian persuasion or something along those lines, and meet the societal definition of what a beautiful woman is with long straight hair, that's one thing. But there could be a medical issue that they have no control over. And the reality is, those of you who are dogging her out for wearing her weave, you'd dog her out even more if she walked outside with that big bald spot on her head. So be mindful of that. There's also autoimmune hepatitis. Yeah, some people that have hepatitis, they didn't have hepatitis because they slept with the wrong person or they ate the wrong something. It could be that the pathogen in their body decided to attack the liver. And so the liver is under attack, and hepatitis winds up developing. You can't live without your liver. So that could, in the long run, prove to be fatal. The stomach, what's the stomach? Celiac disease, as well as Crohn's. I know we're seeing a lot of gluten-free this and gluten-free that. Well, we can't process gluten. I mean, it's just, nutritionists a good nutritionist, one that you pay that's not being told what to tell you by the insurance, is going to tell you, we ain't got no business with gluten in our bodies. So, when you get that gluten in, your body is responding to it. And however long you've been exposed to it, your military guys, your little soldiers have been fighting it for years and years and years. And eventually they just say, hey, you know what, we're tired of this, we fighting every damn thing we see. And that may include your digestive tract, your small and large intestine, stomach, that whole area. And so you wind up with celiac or Crohn's disease. Guillain-Barré affects the brain and the peripheral nervous system. So you're unable to control the movement of your arms and legs, and they don't respond the way your brain tells them to respond. You may be telling your leg to go forward, and your leg may decide to go backwards. Just, that's the what happens with Guillain-Barré. And there's just so many. There's so many. Psoriasis. I know you see that. There's something that's advertised on TV. I can't think of what it is right now. That's supposed to help with psoriasis. Well, psoriasis is an autoimmune condition as well, and it targets it's rashes, and it targets the skin. So these things come in and they target wherever they can. And my research has found that they tend to target areas that might be weak, or areas that might already have something going on, or that, just that are weak. For example, my thyroid was attacked, was targeted, but I was under extreme stress for an extended period of time. So my perfect storm was already kind of in the making, and that extreme stress helped be the final trigger. And because of the thyroid, the adrenals having a strong impact of the stress process and how stress is handled, that's what was attacked in my body. And so, I have to deal with stress a little differently going forward. Whether it's good stress or bad stress, doesn't matter. Stress is stress to my body or to anyone's body. Um, so, how do you know you have an autoimmune condition? Well, there are various symptoms depending on, again, on which part of the body that's been affected. But symptoms can be, and this is just, off the top of my head, pain, swelling, fatigue. You might have goiters growing in different places. You might have fevers, low-grade fevers, constant all the time, lets you know your body's fighting something. And that's why, one of the things I always recommend to people is you look at your lab work yourself. Don't let the doctor tell you it's normal. You look at your own lab work and you determine what normal is. And in one of the more detailed videos, when I talk really about my journey, I'll explain to you how to handle that, because normal is relative to the person. So we all have to find our own normal. We don't let someone in a white coat tell us what's normal for us. You might have concentration issues. There might be memory loss. You might have hair loss. You might have weight changes. And then, various other things that are specific to the particular body part that's being affected. Are there tests? How do you find out that you have it? Well, there are some tests for some conditions, but most of them are like a process of elimination. They have to eliminate all the other diseases that might affect that particular organ, and when they can't find another disease or a test that tests positive for that particular organ, then they give you an autoimmune. Or they'll give you something like chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, or you're just mental psychosomatic. But oftentimes they'll just give you an autoimmune. But there is an anti-nuclear antibody test that they can do. There is a blood test that they can do. It identifies that you have an autoimmune, but it doesn't say which one. So it's a combination of you knowing your body, watching what's going on, the actual office visit, consultation, as well as the test that's being done, and eliminating certain body parts or certain organs, and that way you can help identify which one. Treatments. How do you treat autoimmunes? Well, autoimmunes are just that, autoimmune. Your immune system has gone rogue. It is operating on its own. You no longer control it. The great system that was put in place when your body was designed no longer controls it. It controls itself. It's running the show. And you get to dance to its tune. The great part about it is if you work with it long enough, you can control the song that it's playing. And so you can get to, have a little bit of impact and control over how you're dancing. So you can control the song, but it's still going to play the song when it wants to, and you still get to dance. Some of the treatments for various autoimmunes, NSAIDs, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And that's things like ibuprofen, naproxen, aspirin, that sort of thing. I mentioned aspirin with the rheumatoid arthritis earlier. But some of the others, Celebrex. Haven't you heard that in the news? Toradol is a new one that actually is used for, it's an NSAID, and it's also used for pain and depression. So they'll give you Toradol, and it's a very strong pain pill. I had it once, actually about 2 years ago. I was due for emergency surgery, and I didn't do the surgery that day. Thank God I'm still here. I didn't do the surgery, and that was the pain pill that they gave me that day. And that thing is strong. It was very strong, and that's the new pain pill that they're starting to push on people. But the problem with that, well, I won't call it a problem. I'll just give you the information, and you decide if it's a problem or not. It also is one of the treatments for depression. So you have an autoimmune condition, let's say, might be lupus, and they're treating, their treatment is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. But this NSAID is also used to treat pain, and it's also used to treat depression. Depression operates out of your brain. So this pill has a focus on your brain function. Just think about that for a minute. Some of the others I know, Etodolac is an NSAID, and Mobic, and I forget the brand name for Mobic. Meloxicam, I want to say. Is it Meloxicam? I think it might be Meloxicam is the brand name for Mobic. Mobic is a generic. Those are NSAIDs, but now here's the deal with NSAIDs. They destroy your stomach. They destroy the linings inside your intestines over a period of time. So you take those for too long and you wind up with leaky gut. Leaky gut is where gluten, dairy, and anything else that's inside your intestines leak out into your bloodstream. And they leak out in a rogue manner. They're not going through your blood vessels with your blood. They're going out into your body, into the open body. They're in your lymphatic system now. And the lymphatic system is all that kind of off-white fluid that flows around in the body. Remember, the body is made up of so much water. That's basically your lymphatic system. And with leaky gut, the gluten, the dairy, and if there's any bacteria in there, that'll get loose as well. And anything else that's in there that's coming across that barrier, it leaks out and it goes through your lymph system, and it winds up depositing wherever it wants to deposit. And when it gets there, it creates whatever havoc it wants to create. So those NSAIDs, in the long run, can be a bigger problem than the autoimmune condition itself. And then you have the immunosuppressants. That's another category of meds they give. And that's like a lot of the prednisones and the steroids and things like that. One of the ones they use for Crohn's, if I remember correctly, is methotrexate. I know you've heard that in the news lately. If you've taken methotrexate, you may have a claim. Call this number to see. Makes you wonder. Well, Crohn's, remember that's the autoimmune that impacts your stomach. Crohn's blocks the cell metabolism of cells. So while it blocks the metabolism of the cells and those cells die, it also, I'm sorry, not Crohn's, methotrexate. It also blocks good cells and kills off good cells. So you'll wind up causing damage in your liver, your bone marrow, and your lungs. And just for a plus, methotrexate is one of the drugs they use in cancer patients. Then there's the pain pills, the opioids. The hydrocodones, the codeines, the oxycodones, and all of them, the pain stuff, because autoimmune conditions aren't painful. That inflammation at a lower level is not that bad, but depending on where it's targeted, they can be very, very painful. And so, you wind up having to take pain pills. And so my journey, of course, took me in a little bitty different direction. But, there was a time when I was heavy on them. I wouldn't say heavy, but yeah, heavy on them. Heavy to me, not heavy to the doctors, because they would say that I was non-compliant. They prescribed them things for me to take like every 4 hours. And I might take one in a day and I'd suffer through the rest of the day. because I had a personal commitment to not be addicted to drugs. And so I've seen too many people just in my life be addicted to drugs in some way, whether they're street drugs or whether they're pharmacy provided drugs. And so I had a personal conviction not to be addicted to drugs. So when I would be prescribed all of these pain pills, yeah, I get the prescription. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm taking that thing every 4 hours. Or if I did, if it was that bad, I would take one pill and cut it up into 4 or 5 pieces, or however many pieces I decided to cut it up into. And I would take a piece. So at least I reduced the amount of pain that I was dealing with, and got that every maybe 5 or 6 hours, just to bring the level down. And I would force myself to tolerate that pain until, I could do something to change the circumstances. So, because again, all these pills do something to your body. They mess with your brain function. They do impact to your liver, your kidneys, your colon, your spleen, all of those organs that are designed to clean out your body. All of these pills put an extra emphasis or extra weight on them. And so you just don't want to add any more to them. And then something else I want to bring up about the pills. Some autoimmune conditions, they give you things like Coumadin, especially lupus. They give you Coumadin just to keep your blood from clotting, because lupus does have a high risk of blood clots that go along with it. They give you heparin, Xarelto. I know you've heard that one in the news lately, Xarelto. Heparin, Xarelto, Coumadin. Does anybody remember the term rat poisoning? Yeah, so that's what you're getting. And these are things that they give to cancer patients. So, bottom line, the treatments for these conditions tend to cause, can cause addictions. We said that with the opioids. And they can even cause cancers themselves. Even if you didn't have a cancer, you're going to wind up with a cancer taking some of these pills. Damage to other organs. I talked about the liver and the kidneys and things like that. They can cause infertility. They can position you to not be able to bear children, or not necessarily bear children, not be able to conceive on the women's side, and not be able to, your little soldiers won't march, guys, if you're one. And then the infections, they'll cause more infections. So, one of the other treatments, diet. Doctors will tend to try to control through diet, and diets tend to seek to deal with the leaky gut issue, so that it can strengthen your gut and reduce the inflammation there. Because if there's a bacteria in there, and the chance, that's all your food crap and crud and stuff. I mean, when you eliminate waste, your waste has passed through your stomach and your intestines. That's all the solid food that you've eaten. The liquid goes one direction, the solids, most of the solids, well, all of the solids and a little bit of the liquid passed on through. And so, yeah, there's bacteria in there. And if the leaky gut situation is going on, then that bacteria has a chance of getting out into your body. And once it gets out, if it's the wrong type of bacteria, or it's too much of it, or it stays out for too long untreated, then you have a serious problem, because now you have a systemic infection. Systemic means it's everywhere. It's almost like they can't control it. They would have to drain your body of all this lymphatic fluid, drain your body of all the blood, clean it somehow, and then put it all back in, and still keep you alive while you're drained of all this stuff. So that's why you'll hear people in the hospital and they've got an infection, and this sepsis is the term that they use. That infection has gone rogue in the body, and it's spreading too fast, and they can't control it, and so they just, those people oftentimes wind up, expiring. I lost a very young cousin. He was in his young 20s to an infection that went septic, or became sepsis, in his body. And, we had to say goodbye to him. My daughter, my very own daughter, wind up with an E. coli infection. Actually, during the same time that I was battling, trying to nurse my husband from his injury, as well as work not my autoimmune, my home remedies for the crisis that my body was facing, and they were trying to put me in surgery for. And she wound up with an E. coli infection. We don't know where she got it from, and she wound up in the hospital. And it, stayed with the pediatrician. The pediatrician looked at me and said, "Mom, you can trade." The hospital was only maybe 5, 10 minutes away. She said, "We can call an ambulance or you can transport her." But I'm concerned with sepsis. She was becoming unresponsive. Her affect was just completely. She wasn't. I could clearly see she wasn't my child. And we did what we needed to do. We took action. Everything else got put to the side. Even my husband, who had his issues, were all laid up, camped out at the hospital with her overnight. Well, while she was there. Um, and actually, they didn't have their accommodations were pretty decent. And I think the way they said it's only when you have children there, you're only allowed 2 people. Well, all of us were in there. The security was nice and let us, because my daughter's a twin. And so they allowed us all to be there with her. And so we kind of camped out until it was time for her to leave. Got to meet all the staff, breakfast staff, noon staff, dinner staff. But back to being on track. The diet, like I said, to deal with the leaky gut. What a lot of people do, and doctors are offering now, and this is something I'll talk about in my specific journey, but I also worked in this direction. The paleo diet, you tend to eat, what they recommend, and you tweak it, it's going to be tweaked. Remember, everybody's body is different, and so while there are solutions, recommended solutions, you still have to tweak those recommended solutions for how they work for you. But they'll recommend meat, fish, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, spices, herbs, healthy fats and oils, the omega-3s, things like that. They're going to recommend red wine for the antioxidants and the antioxidant value, and that helps to deal with the free radicals in your brain, as well as circulation. Yeah, I'm actually supposed to be drinking a glass of wine, red wine, every day to help with my circulation. Well, I'm not a big drinker. I do good if I get a cup um, every now and then, and I'm bad about that. And I'll admit it. I don't like the alcohol infusion into the situation. And so periodically I'll do it just to see the impact that it's giving me. I may do it for like a week or maybe 2 or 3 weeks just to see the impact. And if the impact is not great enough, then I put it down. But usually when I go to that particular specialist and he reminds me that I should be doing it, I'll be nice and I'll do it for, maybe the week or two after I leave him. And then I fall off because I just don't, alcohol just doesn't work for me. But what they do tell you for sure is to avoid things like processed foods. Definitely processed sugars, sodas, junk food, grains, dairy. You stay away from dairy, just period if you can. The legumes, vegetable oils. Yeah, the recommendation is to go with coconut oil, or possible olive oil over the like vegetable oil, and what are some of the I don't know some of the other oils that you buy in the big gallon size containers in the stores, but you want to stay away from those. And coconut oil is probably the best. It's kind of pricey, but if you want to live, you spend the money, or figure out some way to grow your own coconuts and harvest the oil. Haven't figured that one out yet. And they definitely tell you to stay away from the margarine and the trans fats and things like that. So that's the overview on autoimmune diseases. These guys, pretty much what happens again is the soldiers in your body are prepared to fight, anything that's coming in to create havoc. And when they fought for so long, or they're so inundated, or they're so overwhelmed, they go rogue and they begin to fight everything in sight. And depending on who's weak, that's who they go to. So again, we've got our brain, our foot, and our hand. We've got an infection. We've got a couple soldiers, one battalion down there in the foot, in the right foot, and we've got 6 battalions up in the brain, because the brain is more important. And the general has already decided that we need to put all emphasis on the brain, because that's the critical. That's going to allow the rest of the body to sustain, even if we have to let the foot go. And these guys have gotten so tired, they're inundated. They're like, you know what? We're just so exhausted. And this hand looks similar to what's going on in the brain and similar to what's going on in the foot. We're attacking the hand also. Now, the hand might not even, the issue might not even be there. But the soldiers, at this point, they're confused. They fought so long and hard, they can't see clearly anymore. So they're attacking the hand, and then they probably gonna get the other foot, and who knows wherever else. So that's it in a nutshell. Autoimmune conditions are when the body itself, well, when the immune system itself has become overactive, has gone rogue, and has begun to damage its own healthy body tissue. And so hopefully you can digest some of that. You may have to play it over a couple times. I know sometimes I talk fast, so I've got to work on slowing that down. But that's autoimmune in a nutshell. And remember, when you see someone with bulging eyes, or some of these ladies wearing weaves, or just someone who's 25 years old and walking with a cane, you don't know what the circumstances are. We don't know that she's wearing her weave. Oh, yeah, we don't know that she's wearing her weave because it's a health issue. We don't know that his eyes are bulging out because there's a health issue that he can't control. We don't know that she's walking 25 years old with that walker or that cane because the attack is in her back and or in her legs, and she needs that to sustain herself, to keep herself up and be able to move around. Or and I'll throw this one out there. At one point, I was in a wheelchair, a power chair. That's how I got around. And I had so many people would look at me and just, now you're too young to be in that. You must be faking. You must be. And trust and believe that the humility, or the humiliation, the feeling of defeat and helplessness and all of that would kick in if I had to go out and I had to, drive or ride, steer this chair as I was getting about. But there were times when I had to go. Going to the doctor's office was fine, but if I had to go somewhere else, go to the kid's school, or wherever else that I had to go, I couldn't send someone to handle it for me. There would be the looks and the stares and the assumptions that someone my young age, and they could obviously see that my legs worked because I could control them, but they weren't strong enough to sustain to hold me. And at the same time, the way my spine was being curved, the chair was necessary because it had to keep my body erect and upright. Otherwise, my leaning over using a walker or a cane was just allowing the bend of the bone to occur. And so I had to be in a chair. People didn't understand that. And I think if I remember correctly, maybe 1 or 2 people asked me. Beyond that, I would get the looks as if, yeah, no, mm-mm. So, and one other thing I forgot to mention about autoimmunes, they go into remission and then they come out. So if you battle this, lupus or whatever it is for the last 2 or 3 months, and now you're on top, it's down, it's in remission, you're not very symptomatic, and you're able to function and kind of do life, that's great. You know what your triggers are, and you can be triggered, and once it's triggered, it's back in full force and it puts you down again. So people who have autoimmunes that are that impact their lives in that way, we want to keep in mind that just because they're down for 2 months now, and we see them up for a week or two or a month or 2 months, does not mean when they get down again that they're faking. Doesn't mean that they have the capacity to go full force and do life as usual and normal. Doesn't mean they have the capacity to do everything they used to do or everything you would expect them to do, because you don't see the wheelchair anymore, or you don't see the cane, or for whatever reason their hair's grown back just a little bit and they're not in a weave. They're comfortable with the amount of hair that's grown and they put the wig or the weave down. That doesn't mean that that condition won't re-flare up again, and when they have to go back to their assistive measures and devices, that they're faking. So that's something that grieves me, because I hear people talk like that, and it grieves me so, because most people with autoimmune conditions go through, you almost want to say, hell behind closed doors, and no one will ever know it. Only someone else with an autoimmune condition would understand what another person with an autoimmune is dealing with behind closed doors. So, that being the case, digest that information and drop comments, questions, feedback, like and share, all that other good stuff. And we'll see you on the next time around. Have a great day.